to another episode of Digitalk Architects. Today we have Jason with us. Jason, please go ahead and tell us about you and yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hey, thank you, Carolina. Appreciate it. Jason Makevich here. I am a cybersecurity professional, founder and CEO of two different companies, Greenlight Cyber and Port One. Been in the industry for about 30 years now, and very excited to be here.
Thank you for coming out and spending this next 40 minutes to an hour with us. All right. So you just mentioned you've been in the industry for about 30 years, which is a long time.
It is.
You built Greenlight Cyber into a very successful managed cybersecurity company. Looking back at, your experience building the company, what are the biggest lessons you've learned about building a business that can scale without depending on just the founder?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because depends on the business. There are some companies out there that have multiple, maybe two founders, and they have some funding, and they'll start with a group of people. And that wasn't the case for Greenlight because honestly, before I started Greenlight, I was a consultant and was dealing with a lot of like network engineering work, very technical work, and decided I wanted to start a company. Well, for the first 4 or 5 years, for the most part, it was just me. I had a part-time guy for a while, had a contractor here and there, but really didn't know how to grow the business very well and didn't really make those strides to do it. And then came a point where I felt the opportunity was there and hired my first full-time employee. And it was funny, actually. I think it was his third day on the job that he and I realized that, well, really the clients realized, wow, there's two of you now. And the floodgates kind of opened, and he and I realized we're going to need help. And that's when we put a job ad out for the third person basically in the company. That person is actually still with the company more than 10 years later. But yeah, so it started, I would say a bit haphazardly, and then over the year went through some various people, mostly really great, but it really wasn't until I found a couple of key people that one of which was that second full-time hire, who after years of being here now she's worked her way up a lot and is a leader in the business. But I also made a very strategic hire a few years back, someone that I knew could eventually likely run the business. And it was a deliberate move. I was very careful and strategic about that, and then worked very closely with him for a while. But I took my time, and we really worked on a lot together. Adam doing a lot of different things in the business, and trust is everything now. So
Absolutely.
you can train a lot. There's a lot people can learn, but there's certain things that are just inherent. It's a character, it's a trust. This wouldn't have worked had he and I maybe had different values, right? It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
No way. But because we do, and because we care about the people on the team equally, and we care about our clients equally, and there's alignment there, and those values are everything. The trust and the core values, the true core values of the character of the person, and then it really just setting up for success and getting the heck out of their way. I think there comes that point where you just have to trust them and let them fail at times, because that's how they're going to improve, but be there to support them. And that's it's a whole different mindset than when you start a company and you're doing it all yourself.
So you started with basically two more people, right? And then how big has it grown to be today?
We're about 20 now, I think.
Okay.
Right around 20 people. Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we have a
Okay.
wonderful, really great people. I'm really
So that was your
privileged.
first company,
Mhm.
right? Greenlight. And then you decided to launch a second business.
Yeah.
What triggered that
Crazy.
decision? Because running one is hard enough. Then you start a second one.
It's funny. Like I think after, I guess when I decided to start the next business, I had Greenlight for probably about 14 to 15 years. And
Okay.
you do something long enough, and you kind of, I wouldn't say get bored. I'm still love Greenlight. I'm excited about it, but you get to the point where it's like you recognize, okay, there's so much I can do. I've done such a good job of getting out of their way and letting them run a business really well, and supporting them a lot. Still very involved in that
Yeah.
that layer of it. to serve and support them. But at the end of the day, like, they don't really need me. And once you get to that point, as a entrepreneur and a leader, a natural leader, and someone that I just love new things, and I'm constantly like thinking of new ideas. It was inevitable that I would do something, and really it came down to, do I want to exit Greenlight or not? And I don't. I don't at all. I love it. It's my family. So, it was, rather than exiting Greenlight formally, I've been able to step away from day to day and let the team, operate the business and run it and do a great job. But it allowed me then to go and pursue this new venture that I am thrilled about.
So tell us about the new adventure. How did you like? What did you see that convinced you to start this new adventure as a second company? What problems were you trying to solve? Because I
It's
understand they're both in cybersecurity,
Yep.
just different approaches, right?
Yeah, different pieces of the market, really. So, like, basically, Greenlight Cyber fits into the industry of MSP, managed service provider, or MSSP,
Right.
managed security service provider. And this is a industry that's evolved over the years, and it's one that I've fallen in love with. I really love that industry, and I care about it a lot. And I think, largely because I'm good friends with a lot of folks in the space, but I think it's also the impact that MSPs can have, especially with cybersecurity being so critical now. And the problem I saw with the MSP industry was, well, there's a lot of problems, a lot of inherent challenges with it. There's no barrier to entry. First of all, I always like to say, like, the person that cuts my hair had to go get a license and do something like 1,000 hours, and you could start an MSP without any of that. Like, there's no barrier at all. And you see that
That's
out
true.
there. There are some MSPs that just shouldn't be. There are many great ones, but there's no distinction between them. And then, formally speaking, and then the problem is, there's no really great way for MSPs to really optimize how they protect their clients. And that's a big deal,
Right.
because that landscape has changed so much, and it continues to very rapidly. And that's where from a kind of trade craft perspective, like, that's my passion, is in cybersecurity, and really helping, especially small businesses, be more resilient and be able to protect from problems, but also be able to survive when things happen. And I've dedicated so much of my, last 30 years of my life to doing that. I volunteer with a nonprofit that does a lot of that work for other nonprofits, and as well as doing that for other MSPs. And really, it was just that passion that really drove me naturally to want to help other MSPs really get better at delivering security outcomes to their small business clients. And I saw some really unique, creative ways to be able to do that successfully. So, and that's when I dove in.
So let me ask you. You said it took you a little bit at the beginning of your first company to kind of realize that you could scale, right? Was it easier the second time around?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
What was different?
I think it's probably similar to, like, parents. A new parent, new parents have the first kid, and it's like, oh my gosh. And then the second one, it's like, yeah, we've done this. It's a lot easier in that regard. But I would say, I mean, gosh, I'm wiser. I've built a much better network. I have some wonderful people that I know I want to work with that I didn't know back then. And when I started Greenlight, there's a lot of things. But then also, when I started Greenlight, I had no money at all. And, now I'm fortunate to have, a little bit to be able to self-fund Port One. And that's really important to me to be able to do that. So a lot of it came down to, being able to kind of start that venture in a way where we can bootstrap, we can be really smart with it, but ultimately we can start it in a way where we can scale with our partners and make sure that we always delivering great service. And we've been able to do that for about a year and a half now. It'll be, yeah, almost going on 2 years. So, still a startup, but very much a startup mentality. We all wear many hats at Port One, but it's great, and have just an outstanding team of people I get to work with every day.
So are you bootstrapping Port One just the
Yeah.
same way you did with Greenlight?
Yep. Yep. You got to. You got to. I don't. I'm not out there getting venture capital or investment. I am really trying to make this work in a way where, have full control and really be able to do this the right way. And we're able to do that. But we've had some good support from partners, the more strategic partners that we have at the business. So that's been really helpful.
Amazing. So with two businesses, you're serving two very distinct markets, right?
Yeah.
With Greenlight, you're servicing businesses with directly with their needs, right? So let's talk about that for just a minute, because cybersecurity is one of those things that business owners see as a problem they have, but when they're trying to solve it, they're thinking that it's you come in, you solve it, and then you just kind of let it be. And I think and I know you'll agree with me on this. It's bigger than that. It's not a set it and forget it,
Mhm.
because it's rapidly changing all the time.
Yeah.
What's the biggest misconception medium-sized businesses have about protecting their businesses in the cyberspace?
I would say the biggest one I see used to be them saying we're too small. But now I would say it's small business owners and small business leaders that believe that this is really to be a risk managed by IT, whether that small business has an MSP or has a small internal IT team, or maybe one IT guy, or maybe a consultant that, you know, shows up from time to time, or whatever it is. Most every small business has someone handling IT. And so many times I see business owners thinking that IT, whoever it is, can handle it or should handle it, and it's there. And that's all well and good until something happens. Because as soon as something happens, it turns from an IT problem to a business problem immediately. And it's a risk that the business leadership needs to own and needs to put a seat at the table for the right person or company or what have you, to really, partner up and, strategically focus on how they can manage that risk.
Okay, so the green light approach, right? But then you also have part one, which is bringing a help to bringing enterprise grade cybersecurity solutions to MSPs, which then serve smaller businesses, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Why do
exactly.
you think? Why do you think that gap exists, and how are you helping close that gap?
Yeah. So there's no shortage of providers out there that provide various software solutions or what have you. The technologies out there are kind of endless. The challenge is MSPs are very unique, and the support that they need, not just technical support, the enablement they need, the commercial enablement, the sales enablement, the technical enablement, and all of that. It needs to be catered to how MSPs operate. And some of the best technologies out there are with companies that have done tremendously well in the enterprise. They've done
Mm-hmm,
tremendously well up market. And that's where their focus has been, and probably should be for them to do well financially and to make their
mm-hmm,
shareholders very happy. The problem is the MSPs typically, the majority of them, those that aren't giant, typically can't work with those companies and therefore can't work with that technology, because those companies don't have a good program around that MSP channel. And so it's really that MSP channel program that is the problem. You have these larger companies that may or may not try to, run a channel, but 9 times out of 10, it doesn't go well. It's very rare we come across a company like that that runs a good MSP channel and makes good decisions that supports the channel consistently. And that's what I wanted to solve for. I saw an opportunity with one of our partners. We had partnered at Greenlight, we had partnered with Island, which is a very fast growing, successful enterprise browser company. And they were doing great up market, continue to, large clients like Pfizer, Starbucks, United Airlines, and the list goes on and on. Well we at Greenlight, we had started to work with them, built a great relationship, and saw this opportunity that Island was good with, I was excited about, to build a channel for them where we could bring their technology to the MSP industry and down into the small business, area. And that's been amazing. And it's opened up so many opportunities for MSPs and for small businesses to save a ton of money and have much better cybersecurity out of it.
Amazing. Okay, let's shift a little bit into today's problems. AI, the topic of the year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So AI is transforming cybersecurity on both sides of the equation. You know that. I know that. In your particular case, how is AI changing the way businesses should think about protecting themselves? And I guess, give me the answer because I mean, you're running the two businesses, right? So
Yeah, but it's key, man.
from the small ones to the big ones, I know that these you got to solve different problems, because when it's a small business, the 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 problem is smaller, but also the budget. And when you have the bigger enterprises, the budget is definitely more given, and but also the problems are much bigger. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of risks and challenges with AI right now. I think one of the inherent ones is just simply that everything's changing so quickly. It's so hard to keep up. This is the first time in my career that I have felt like it's almost impossible to actually stay on top of everything going on. And
I agree.
the adoption is so much faster. You look at the adoption rate of AI versus any other technology we've ever had. We've had some big changes in my lifetime. It's amazing. The internet and software as a service and
The cell
e-commerce,
phone,
cell
the
phones, smartphones,
tablets.
all of it. But the
Hmm.
the quickness of adoption has been at a degree that we've never seen at that
And
quick pace.
yet so small. Because I mean, in the big picture, you're right. The adoption is massive, but at the
Mhm.
same time, it's still so small.
Well, it's
And
all
I
relative.
saw this.
Yeah.
I saw this graphic. I don't think I have it handy, but if it shows, if this was the population, the entire population of the world, adoption will be like 0.01% or something ridiculous of
Hmm.
people using, like, really using AI.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference between, and we can spend on this, and there's a difference between just asking ChatGPT a question, which, yes, is valid. That's using AI, but like really using AI for far more than just asking it questions. Doing automations with AI. I mean, look at how far it's come in video, in voice cloning. So all of those are
Yeah.
real risks for companies, right?
Yep.
And I mean, we talk about just asking questions, right? Like, it's massive when there is so much data going out, right? Like, how are we protecting data for small businesses? Again, small businesses, maybe smaller budgets, you could argue sometimes bigger problems, bigger enterprises, much bigger budgets, but also massive risks, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, everything is relative, and you can have large organizations that can have big budgets and be able to afford adoption of AI at a large scale, but also the governance that's needed around it. Hopefully, but in the smaller organizations, there's no budget for any of that, and even if there is, it's not going to be nearly enough 9 times out of 10 because AI is terribly expensive, and then the cost to mitigate that can be as well. But it's also just how quickly things are changing. So the moment you put controls in place to try and protect from various risks of AI, by the time you go implement those, is it really going to be enough? Because now all of a sudden there's this new thing, and it's like, well, is this gonna help protect from the risks of that new thing that now everyone wants to use? So
And
it's like we
yeah,
need to slow down a little bit. We need to catch our breath. We need to be a little more strategic about this. And we can't let innovation is great. I love it, and I think we need to do it. But I think innovation must be safe. If you just go and innovate without governance being built in, and you try to bolt it on after the fact, it's going to be problematic. And a lot of businesses, especially smaller businesses, are going to find potentially major business impact down the line because of some of the things they're doing today.
100%. I mean, I just look at this week alone and it's been a massive week in AI. The new releases and new models for Anthropic. And then Fable is back out of
Fable's back.
of
Yep.
jail. So, and that it in itself has some massive implications because of, how big of an update that is. How do you
Yeah.
deal with that with the businesses that you are helping with when all of that, because I'm thinking you're probably getting a ton of inquiries and people wanting to implement things as fast as they're coming out, and how do you deal with that, with the volume, and like you said, like it changes so fast.
Yeah, it does. We're having a we're it's a lot of work. We're having to stay on top of it all and constantly looking for, various ways where if a client wants to innovate in a certain area, which, at Greenlight's doing a lot to help clients innovate, but safely, right? So a lot of it is architectural. It's going to be based on how things are designed. For instance, let's say someone wants to vibe code an application, something that's going to improve workflow or whatever. That's fine until that is a program, let's say that's accessible publicly, and now anyone could get into it if they could break in. Well, vibe coding is notoriously not hardened and therefore potentially insecure. Well, how do you do that? You need to have the infrastructure in place that's designed so that it's not publicly available. It's available to the users that need it, and that's it. And there are ways to do these things. The various access control layers that can exist, and zero trust principles applied, principle of least privilege applied. These fundamentals apply to AI just like they have for data protection access control in the past. They just need to be applied. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the times with AI, you've got you've got people in an organization that just decide to go swipe a credit card and get the product, and don't really have a thorough process to do it right and go through the proper vetting, go through the proper governance. It's nice that in a well operating MSP like Greenlight, that can be done efficiently without a lot of red tape, but there still needs to be that process, and the MSP really does need to be involved, and the MSP needs to be good at doing it. And that's at for one something we're really actively trying to help our partners be good at doing that and have those conversations with their clients, because it's something that at Greenlight we've been able to really you know be at that kind of forefront with our.
Okay, so two questions that come to mind as you're working through all of these. It's not just AI, but the day to day. What's the first thing you look at when you're assessing a new company's cybersecurity posture?
From a technical perspective, or
I think so. Risk perspective. I
yeah,
think
I would say that the most important thing, I mean, it's going to come down to the culture of the leadership of the organization, and it's going to come down then to the level of trust and communication that we have with them. That's going to be, it's similar to what I was talking about when you hire people. You can train on certain things, other things are inherently just there, and that's part of it, is that relationship that we have with them and the trust that we get to have. But being able to actually really partner, so it's us versus the problem, that's number one. Once we have that, then at that point, from a more technical level, you know, traditionally we'll run an assessment. We're going to look at a lot of various areas, see where the attack surface is, see where the threats are, and learn what the business impact would be. And that's the most important thing, is what's the impact if something does happen, so that we know what to mitigate and how far to go with it.
Okay. So at this point in time, what is the biggest opportunity you're seeing for small and medium-sized businesses in terms of their, let's call it, AI posture?
Well, I mean, opportunity wise, there's already a lot that businesses can be doing with AI and innovation in general, around various workflow automation and yeah, I mean, there's so much. Physicians could be using AI to help with actual care, and the staff at those clinics or offices or hospitals should absolutely be able to use AI and be not only more efficient but more effective. And then you get into law firms and helping with contracts. Like there's almost every single industry is going to have some innovation that's going to help through AI that's going to help them. The key is, like I said, do it safely. And so you have to have fundamentals in place and you have to have the right people at that table making those decisions strategically. And I also think you need to have that 360 buy-in. I've seen a lot of organizations more in that kind of mid-size market, and I'm sure in the enterprise it's even more so, where the decisions are very much top down. Leadership
Yeah.
will decide on how governance will be applied, and then that's how it is. Well, the problem is you don't get the buy-in from the actual users, and they're going to go do something different, or they're not going to buy into and adopt what it is that the organization wants to do. And they're the ones that are probably going to have the best ideas. And so you really need to bring in, not every business can bring everyone in. Smaller ones maybe could, but as you scale, then you're going to have some kind of sample of representatives of the user base. But bringing them in to where you get that 360 view, but also that 360 dynamic around innovation and also buy-in of governance. I mean, you get them together and you get them to understand what the impact on the business and on them could be if something went wrong, and why it's so important to have controls in place, why we can't just go do all these fun, crazy things, but at the same time, how can we innovate and improve and do this together as a team? A committee of AI innovation and making sure governance is an equal part of those conversations. I think is the biggest opportunity right now. Almost every single organization has, and if done right, I think it have the best impact on their business.
Awesome. So, from your perspective in cyber security combined with AI, how are cyber criminals using AI today, and how has that changed the threat landscape over the last couple of years?
It changes it a lot because hackers back before things like ransomware and funds transfer fraud and all that became so prevalent, hackers were annoying at most. Like for small businesses, not really that big a deal. But when
Mm.
when hackers, cyber threat actors, when they figured out how to monetize their skills, I think that's when everything shifted initially. And it kind of turned into this whole industry of cyber crime. Cyber crime is really the problem because that's the motivator for threat actors is the crime part of it, the money, the monetization
Yeah,
of what they do. But now it's gotten so easy to where you don't have to be the cyber guy, you don't have to be the hacker, you just have to be a criminal with a computer, and that's it. Because with AI and some of the toolkits out there that these cyber criminals use, they don't even need to be technical. They just need to be bad, just bad, greedy, selfish, unethical, what have you. And they need to go and do a little bit to get a lot, basically do a lot of damage. And the damage can be extreme on not just businesses, but all the people that depend on those businesses. And that's why I'm so passionate about small business, because the impact on people seems greater. It is greater in those. You get a
in a
large
small
company,
business.
there's some impact. It's big, it's scaled, but you get a small business that has a major ransomware event or funds transfer event, and now people might lose their livelihoods over that, and it can be just absolutely devastating. So it's what motivates me the most. But yeah, AI has just exacerbated it so much. It's an amplifier. It's a
Amplifier.
catalyst. And it's something that has made it so accessible for any criminal to be a cyber criminal. And now with all the ways they can, trick people with the social engineering, the phishing and various forms of that they can do, all the more reason for users to be what I like to call digital paranoia. Just don't trust
It's
anything
true.
digitally. So yeah, I think that shifting that mindset, establishing a culture of digital paranoia in any organization is going to be critical. And then the other is supporting your IT and cybersecurity folks to actually make the improvements they need to make. Business leaders need to do that. Otherwise, you're sitting duck.
Okay, so let's flip it. So now on, from your point of view, so we have the cyber criminals, right? How are you and cybersecurity companies in general using AI to stay ahead of all those threats?
How are we using AI to do that? Well, I mean, to a degree, we do. There are there's tooling out there that uses AI that helps a lot, and it's really more the speed at which we can detect and respond to events. That's going to be a big part of it. There's a, the risk is you rely too heavily on those things, and you might skip out on the fundamentals, and the fundamentals matter. They're really important, and they apply. They apply all just as much to AI as any other technology. So the fundamentals, I think, are still most important, but then ultimately, AI, it really it helps us keep pace in certain areas, and especially around security operations, being able to detect and
Mm-hmm.
respond to threats more quickly. There are various, ways to use AI to help educate folks and just kind of get them to be a little more digitally paranoid and know more, more aware, know what to do, in certain scenarios. But yeah, and then AI also just helps with the development of various, cybersecurity software solutions or whatever. So you're seeing quicker improvement of these solutions too, because they're using AI to do their sprints and ultimately roll out functionality a lot more quickly now.
Good. All right. So we're using AI. Do you think AI will eventually replace certain cybersecurity roles?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, certainly. I think the big one's going to be around security operators. So those that are especially kind of the level one folks in security operations centers that have been having to look at these screens of alerts and sift through them and make decisions and assess decision making based on patterns that AI can be very good at because that's kind of how AI operates. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's already happening. We're already seeing a ton of that. And I think that yeah, there will be a lot more pattern recognition that AI will be very good at doing. So it's going to be more on the active defense role, I would say. I'm not sure so much because architecturally speaking, so much of it is just how things are built and designed from the
Mhm.
ground up, and AI will play a factor in development. But other than that, there's still you're still going to have smart people making smart decisions, and AI might help execute those. So.
All right. Bonus question. How can companies encourage employees to use AI without creating unnecessary security risks?
Well, I think the best way to do that is you bring in the right people. So you bring in you build a kind of a committee of folks in the organization that would be innovating and benefiting from that innovation. But you also bring in somebody at least that understands how to mitigate the risks associated with that and how to build out a governance program that's going to help make sure that whatever the innovation is, it's done safely and bringing that into one committee where everyone gets aligned and everyone agrees to certain things, certain standards. The problem is most smaller organizations aren't doing any of that. They're just swiping credit cards and going and getting tools. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, they've exposed all their data to a public AI model and don't even think twice about it. And it's those kinds of risks that keep me up at night. Business owners need to be aware there are major risks here. They're likely existing in your organization, and you really do need to do something about it. At Greenlight, we do a lot of AI risk assessments that lead to those conversations that ultimately then lead to the controls that get put in to protect. But it's always after the fact, right? Because they've already done some stuff. The best way to do it is just stop swiping credit cards, stop making changes, bring in the right people, start having those conversations, and get a hold of this while you can, because it's going to get way out of hand really quickly.
Very good. Anything else you feel like it's important to share with our audience today that will make a difference or an impact on their cybersecurity posture or how they handle AI? Anything you want to share that might be a useful tip?
I think the most important thing is that business leaders, business owners, they need to know you can't defer who owns the risk of cyber. You own it. It is a business risk, just like any other. You don't. That doesn't mean you have to solve everything for it. You need to trust experts, the right people, and you need to put a seat at the table for them. And you need to be part of some strategic discussions, at least around business impact and making decisions. And you need to support what it is that they recommend. You can't, there's a double-edged sword here. You want to innovate, you want to use AI. There's a cost to doing that. And part of that cost is the governance and the security and the doing things the right way. You know, you got a brand new race car with AI. You got to put the seatbelts in there and you got to put the helmet on. Just, you know, be practical about it. And I think the biggest thing is the trust that you know you should have with who you work with. And you know, if you don't trust them, then there's a core fundamental problem that's going to end up probably hurting you a lot. You got to trust who you're working with.
Very good. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming out and spending this time with us. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and helping the audience mitigate a little bit of that cybersecurity. Tell us how people can find you if they want to, discuss more of their cybersecurity posture with you.
Yeah, I mean, my name is pretty unique. So Jason Makevich, you can find me on LinkedIn, greenlightcyber.com, port1.io are the websites of my two businesses. But yeah, would love to hear from anybody. If I can ever be of any help, I'm always happy to talk to folks and, just be a sounding board if nothing else.
Amazing. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and listening to this episode of Digitalk Architects. We'll see you in the next episode. Have a good one.